Well, nice to see a full room on a festive day at the G20 time. So I joined Devika and the BW team in welcoming all of you. Thank you for making it in these numbers. Some of our panelists have traveled in from far as well, so I thank them as well. And I believe the next 49 minutes, is that how much we have? Is going to be an exciting discussion on the role of CSR. We have an interesting mix on the panel here. We have social responsibility as a function, sustainability as a function, skills development. So each comes with tremendous experience, an illustrious set of speakers here. So we'll get started with the Q&A, but very quick round of an introduction as to why I'm here in this seat, questioning a very illustrious panel. I represent what our colleague here just mentioned, AVPN, which is a social investors network. We work in trying to bring more capital towards impact work. So working with funders, whether it's philanthropies, corporate foundations, impact funds, DFIs, to be able to direct that capital, but to also create an opportunity for collaboration, to be able to make more value of the capital that comes together instead of working independently. So we are a network that creates such a forum, the largest of its kind for Asia. Our mandate is to really, just like the Make in India theme that we have here in India, for Asia as well, there are solutions which are unique to our continent. There's problems that are unique. There are solutions as well that are unique. We don't need to look west for solutions, but there is a tendency. So our work is also to highlight that kind of work that's happening in our region. And that is what I think is very effectively represented here on the panel. So without much ado, I'll get into the Q&A. Are we all ready? So the way we'll do this is we'll have one round of questions each for the panelists. Hopefully they will be able to reflect the kind of work that they're doing through the questions. But we also keep some questions from the audience. If you have any, we'll come to you as well. Of course, time permitting. There's a clock ticking away in front of me. So I'm hoping to ensure that we get enough of the perspective from both sides of the room. Right. So I just lined up the questions in alphabetical order here, but happy to take them in any order. To start with, maybe proximity, I'll start with you, Ambika. So Ambika, as his introduction read, he's the CEO of the head Odisha region for Tata Steel Foundation. As you all are well aware, Tata Steel is so entrenched in social impact work much before it became a mandate in the country. And the work of TSF is deep-rooted in community-led development. And with your work focused in the states of Odisha and Jharkhand, you champion the voice and the traditional wisdom of communities. When you fund programs through your CSR, how does this respect and trust for the communities and your community partners translate to procedures, programs, the deployment, and the reporting, which has now become much more stringent, Ambika?
Thank you, Lavanya. I think yesterday was Teachers' Day, and sitting next to someone who is going to questioning is no less than a teacher. So thank you for asking the question that we have been entrenched. Friends, I come from Odisha, and there I work with Tata Steel as the head of the foundation. As all of you know, we are guided by the spirit of philanthropy, which is very clearly stated by the founders of Tata Group as good thoughts. There are three guiding spirit: good thoughts, good deeds, good work, that means good work, and good words. So you can't go beyond that. So there are the three things. And I am not very old in Tata Steel, but have been working with the communities for a long time, be it NGOs or the UN systems. What I've realized when I joined in Tata Group, I found the ecosystem is the purpose of business in Tata Group is not just to make money, but to create higher values for the next generation. And that can only be done by demonstrating through our work. So what we do, there are two basic approaches. One is proximate community development. We have many locations starting from mining to plant locations, SEZ. So many locations we go beyond tribal communities. But our identity, Tata's with tribal, we take pride in that. And the second one is we also collaborate with the federal state as well as the national agenda of the government. So when in Odisha, be it like just few days before, probably in the urban habitat, you would have hardly seen any work being done, which government of Odisha has done a very tremendous work on giving land rights to the urban slum dweller in situ. And Tata Steel Foundation is a partner over there, be it Mission Shakti. So what we do primarily when we go to the community, we start building a kind of shared values and start thinking of the shared agenda. So through that process, as Lavanya has been raising questions, we ask critical questions to the communities so that they start thinking about it. Like for example, I will give an example like when we started engaging with the farmers. In Odisha, we work with close to 50,000 farmers. You would have seen always, as many of you are from development sector or from the media background, the prefix before farmer has not always been very inspiring. But it would be poor farmer, helpless farmer. When we started discussing with the communities, we started building their aspiration. So we thought of, can a farmer become a lakpati? So they said, how can be a farmer be lakpati? And then we started working on that. And the stated goal was 2 lakh per annum income, irreversible income, even if we withdraw. That's for a family size of 4 point, the Indian family size. And we are able to achieve close to 30% in that direction. And anytime we go to the communities and we see, as popularly said, when you are confusion, where do you go? You go to the communities, you will find an answer. Second example I will give, with the Tata group, we have created a platform called Sambad, where we invite tribal communities, not only from Odisha, Jharkhand, where we are primarily in these 2 states, but all over the country, as well as a few international countries also, indigenous communities, they come. There is no branding of Tata over there. It's a platform for the tribal communities. They come, they share, they talk about their sorrows, they talk about their agonies, they celebrate their success. They also chart the path how to proceed further. So that's also a platform where we engage with the tribal communities. Then with that, every year we do, as many of you, some of you must be from Maharashtra, that's Initiatives of Change by Dr. Rajmohan Gandhi, Nikitu Iralu, who were responsible for Nagaland peace building and all that. So these are the leaders who provide training to our young tribal communities, tribal leaders. That's called the TLP. We do that every year. 100 tribal young boys and girls we select from various states and provide them training and handholding support to carry it forward. How can you really amplify the voice of the tribal communities? And there is a, friends, if you start engaging with the tribal communities, there is a great thing to learn from them, especially the tribal way of life. The way they preserve, they conserve. Based on that, we started working on conservation of water, plantations, and a lot of activities, because they can't stay in a place which doesn't have such rich natural resources. So building ecosystem has also been one of our major activity over there. And we start something called moral rearmament. It's not the right word to use. So when we started, I'll give an example. So once I was driving back from Jamshedpur to Bhubaneswar, the driver was a young boy, would be 23 and 25 years of age. So I just felt excited that I need to have this guy as my driver. So I still remember his name, Sunil. I said, Sunil, you are driving so well. Your behavior is very satisfying. Would you like to come to Bhubaneswar to drive the office vehicle or my vehicle? He said, sir, thank you for the offer. 6 days I work for myself and 1 day I work for the community, for my village. I said, what? 23 years old boy says. I said, who told you to do this? He said, no, I was like others. I was sitting in that, the boy comes from Sukinda. That's the mining location. So I was there and I was chewing tobacco and all that. And then this Tata TSRDS people, they just picked me. They said, Sunil, chalo ek training mein chalte hain. And they pushed me to Panchgani. I went there. I came back and I decided that 6 days I will work for my living and 1 day for the society. By that time, friends, I would have approved close to maybe 8,000 young boys and girls to go for the training. I just thought it's just a training. Then I decided, no, I will go and participate in that. And when I went, I thought I will just be there for the inauguration. I stayed back for the entire session. Senior bureaucrat from Maharashtra, she's a good friend. She came, she said, Ambika, I will just come for the inauguration. She stayed back for the 5-6 days. So finally, the day when we were just coming out, Rajmohan Gandhiji was sitting, and then all of us were sitting on the floor. He just asked, "Pucho, kisko kya puchna hai?" So, as a student of JNU, so we always had this desire to raise a question. I just asked him, I just finished in another 1 minute. So I just asked him, sir, 6 days of training we all have undergone. What is the real meaning of leadership? Trust me, he said something, it brings tears to my eyes. He said, Ambika, it's very simple. I said, sir, tell me. Daro mat, darao mat. Can you think about it? It only comes from people like him. Daro mat, darao mat. That's the leadership. You inspire people, and probably we are guided by them. We facilitate community consultation, build shared vision, and work with the communities, be it tribal or other communities, with the state. As we work with the states, we also have we do critical analysis. We are thought leaders in Odisha and Jharkhand. Anytime government of Odisha thinks of doing something interesting, so they call us for consultation, for ideas. So that's where we are making our small attempt. So once, last story, I am a storyteller only. Once Sir Ratan Tata was visiting Gopalpur, just 1 minute. See, he had interaction with the children who are infected with HIV. After listening to all that, he asked one of the child, what do you want to do in future? He told me in Odia and I translated. He said, like, I want to be a big man like him on good money and do charity. I translated that. After listening to that, he asked a very simple question. Are we doing enough for them? So even if whatever the engagement, whatever the story I say, we are always guided by our senior leadership. Are we really doing enough for them? We need to do a lot for them. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Ambika. And I know there's so much more richness in the stories that Ambika has to share. I'm sure we'll get an opportunity during the course of the day as well. But I have some follow-on questions which we'll come back to you. Right? I'll move to Anusha. Yes, there you are. Sorry. Anusha is the founder and mentor of Make Earth Green Again, which is a mega foundation, and on Pawsitive Farm Sanctuary. So you've been working in this area and have been active for quite some time. How have you seen CSR practices and funds evolve? I think if you are able to share both the pros and cons so that there is, again, a richness of learning for the audience. And is there any kind of candid advice you might have to offer to CSR? Because we have the panel here as well. So, yeah.
See, hello. I have been working for animals for over 34 years. Till recently, it had always been a personal effort. And when we run an agency, and 90% of our income goes back to our charity. I know everybody is not as crazy as us, but it has given us immense satisfaction. And there is one simple thing that I want to tell to anyone who wants to do CSR, is that the more you give, the more you get. And there is nothing greater than the satisfaction that you make. See, I have realized in CSR when it comes to animal welfare that very few are actually interested. That's why our foundation is called Make Earth Green Again, because we move to greater causes. If Earth makes a difference to you, then it should be Earth, and all the inhabitants fall inside Earth. When it comes to tree plantation, when it comes to making, balls which we, seed balls that we put across, when it comes to working with acid victims. All these different aspects that we do, we actually give back to society. I feel in our space that CSR needs to be actually CSR. We should align it with what goals we have, what we want to actually achieve, and then pick up a cause that we can take to the last level, which is what we do as an organization. We pick up charities that we believe in, we work with them and take them to the last level. When there was cyclone, we didn't wait for anyone else to come in. We started planting trees. BMC came in with us. BMC brought in people. Then sponsors came in with us. We automatically started planting trees. Now, I didn't want to plant small saplings because the trees that are gone are 40 years old. We at least bring a 10-foot tree. So it made a very big difference, because the first thing that I did was, next to my house, I planted 10, 15 feet trees. And then the BMC guys who came along said, let's do more. So we started doing more. So how we work is on the other side, which I would just take a minute to share, that because we work on brands, so it's very easy for us to give back to the brand. If you plant a tree, we bring a celebrity on board. The celebrity doesn't charge anything. The brand invests in it, and then we create news that makes a big difference. So when we do this, it's a win-win for everyone. Like, for example, when we work with builders, we know, okay, they need to allot a certain amount of place for plantation. We do Miyawaki. He is happy, he gets a green garden, the place actually gets a garden. And the change in the temperature, the change in the environment, everything is measurable. Similarly, when we pick up tangible things that work, it makes a big difference. Like, I somehow feel that you begin with example. And CSR is not something that is a management thing. Like how he said very simply, first give them the dream and then hold their hand to reach where they have to. And you have no idea of the kind of empowerment that makes a big difference. It's not about, it's like, I'm telling you a very small thing, I won't take much time. Like when we go to give people blankets, you have an auto wala coming and saying, isko bhi blanket dena. So we give him the blanket and say, put it for them. That is the empowerment that makes a difference. Tomorrow he goes on to do the same thing forward. So whatever we are doing in terms of environment, in terms of gender equality, in terms of sustainability, in terms of bringing up communities like the tribals, it is very important that it is not a thought that is there, or not just a fund that has gone out. It should be a simple process of lighting a lamp. Light yourself, light the next person, light the next person. We will bring light into this world. That is what CSR should actually do.
Wonderful, Anusha. I think, thank you for keeping it that simple, that, it's just about making small shifts. I think the whole, while your name is mega, I think the approach is just so micro, simple to execute. And I'm going to connect it back also to the simplicity of the message that Ambika gave us, where to be fearless and to be gentle, right? Daro mat, darao mat is a lesson I haven't heard on leadership ever before, but the simplicity of the message is striking. So I think both the speakers so far have resonated in the approaches being simple, but the dreams being large, and to be able to constructively take each step towards it. So we'll move now to Arindam Lahiri. Arindam Lahiri represents now another different perspective. He is the CEO of the Automotive Skills Development Council. We're aware your mission is to continuously develop and upgrade automotive skills for the country. I know it must have taken a completely exponential spin with the Make in India mandate. So Make in India needs people who can make in India as well. So in your own work that involves a lot of different collaborations, whether it's CSR, associations, skills training institutes, academic institutes, from this vantage point that you have of working together as an industry to create this kind of social impact, you must have seen the influence of the power of the industry. So can you please share your thoughts on what changes, what multipliers really happen when the industry comes together on certain initiatives?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lavanya, for that question. And it's a pleasure to be here on this elite forum. The name says BW Disrupt, and when I saw this name, I mean, we keep talking about disruptions in the automotive industry. Today's automotive is not the same as what it used to be even 10 years back, the way things have moved. Automotive industry in India is one of the largest employers in the country. Almost about 30 million people are directly, indirectly involved in this. And while skill was always very important, I think it's becoming even more important in today's context, and the industry is facing it. So large corporates, I don't think has so much pain. I mean, they also have their own pain points, of course. But the larger amount of employment, almost about 80% of the employment, happens in the medium-sized or small-sized enterprises. And that is where the challenge of skilling becomes extremely, extremely difficult, because it's not a very aspirational job for the youngster to look forward to. It's also not very well paid at the start of their career, let's say. And there are challenges that capacity building internally itself is also a big, big challenge. So this is where a council like ours is essentially working on, in terms of being a bridge between the various stakeholders, the training institutions, the governments, whether it's central, state, or local governments, and the industry, enabling them to come together for a common cause. And that common cause today, while skilling is what we impart, but the outcome of that is what we look at as a sustainable livelihood, which can impact families forever. Because when you start earning, whether it's on a wage employment or on a self-employment mode, the socio-economic orbit that the family belongs to changes forever. I came into this field around 2007 or 8, when the first seeds of rejuvenation of skilling in India was actually happening. And this was, I remember it from those days. I had gone into a place called Hanumangarh in Rajasthan for a convocation for certificate distribution of the program that we had done. And I actually asked one of the boys that, you spent 3 months in training, have you really learned something? So he said, "Ha, sir." So I asked him, what did you learn? He said, training ne mujhe jeena sikhaya. And that was so powerful, at that point in time, that this training can change your life forever, because it makes you sustainable. So as a council, I think there are areas that we look forward in terms of how we work with industries, with many of our CSR partners, in 5 areas, essentially. One is in terms of, most of these are related to the capacity building of the entire ecosystem, because it doesn't exist in that way in India. So we utilize those funds either in training of trainers. There's a tremendous shortage. You want to do skilling, but who's going to impart that skilling? Unless you have skilled trainers who have the training skill and the domain skills. So training of trainer is a big one. Next is the infrastructure required to do the training, because most of the training is very hands-on, and it requires physical elements of training devices. Third is the training process itself, where it can be used to bring in new segments of learners. So, tribals, for example, is a very important focus. Gender inclusion is a very important focus, because, again, automotive industry is not very naturally attractive for women to come and work for. It's not the perception generally. So it takes an effort. So this is number 3. Number 4 is the area of upskilling. People who are already engaged in the industry, whether they are self-employed, more importantly, 2 segments that we see, which are slightly unorganized in the context of our industry. One is what we generally refer as the roadside mechanics or independent mechanics. And the second is the drivers, the professional drivers. Both of them, there is actually nobody who imparts them continuous professional development, the term that we use in a corporate world. How do you keep skilling and upskilling and reskilling yourself? So we need to figure out a way to be able to deliver. And not only do we need to fund their training, we also need to fund the time that they lose because they come to the training. So it's very complex in that sense. And finally, I think the requirement is in terms of safety. As an industry, as an industrial application, we see safety as a major area of concern, which can make people, loss of life is one thing. Second is loss of livelihood because of safety issues. And the loss of livelihood can lead to an entire family going back to the same level of poverty cycle, where they would have come from, having been skilled. So safety of people working on various areas. So we work on safety in the industrial safety applications as well as in the road safety application, because that's again a big area of concern for us as a country. So these are the kind of areas where we are engaged, and we keep looking for partners who would want to come down and work on some of these areas, scale this up. The need is there to collaborate, because without that, I think in today's context, this large problem is always going to remain a large problem, and we can't make it simple or small as we would want to. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Arindam. I had lined up another speaker at this point, but from the theme of collaboration that you had, I think I'll take it to Chetan, if you're okay with that, Chetan. From the work that we've seen, you representing CEO, Tech Mahindra Foundation as a reintroduction. So you work through partnerships, and not only with not-for-profits, educational institutes, but also with peers in the industry or complementing partners like Cisco, or we've heard of other organizations you've partnered with. But this is not a norm, right? So what have been your learnings? Because it is a difficult journey. While collaborate is a word that we use liberally, and I attend a number of events, and this is probably, we do have a buzzword we note down every time, and collaborate comes up at every event. Can I get a vote of hands that we've heard that often? But can we leave our hands up in the air if we think it's easy? Right. So it's really hard work, but there are organizations who are proving that, we can do it. So I'd like to learn from your experience on, how you navigate those challenges of collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lavanya, and would want to start by thanking the BW team and all the organizers for inviting me on this illustrious panel. I think, before we talk about collaboration per se, let me just spend a couple of minutes talking about what we at Tech Mahindra Foundation do. Of course, being part of the Mahindra group, the element of purpose is something which is extremely important to us, like the case of Tata's, like you mentioned. So I think these are some of the business houses who have a rich legacy of giving back to society. And I think as over the last decade or so, especially after CSR, has come in and become kind of mainstream in the business lexicon, I think it's pretty clear that the CSR that we are doing has to be more structured, it has to be more focused. And in that sense, we at Tech Mahindra Foundation have been quite fortunate, because from the time that we began back in the year 2006, 2007, we had a fairly clear mandate of working around the theme of empowerment through education. And in all of these years, about 17 years of our existence, we've stayed focused on this theme. What we've done is to kind of expand the definition of education to include skill development, because we look at this as a continuum. Education and skill development is part of a continuum. And also, from the time that we've started, we've given emphasis to persons with disabilities, because it is there in our CSR policy. But even before that, when we began, the founders left us with a very clear goal that at all times, at least 10% of our beneficiaries have to be persons with disabilities. So we've stuck to these 3 themes, and what we are now working on essentially is working for children, working for youth, and working with teachers. So these are the 3 areas that we've been focusing on. And within children, there's a, as I said, deeper emphasis on working for children with disabilities, which as we are working, in that space, we are realizing how much there is more to work in that. And therefore, now coming to the question, Lavanya, I mean, if you think about it, collaboration obviously is within the social sector, is the logical and the intuitive way to work forward. You cannot not work without collaboration. I don't think any of us, however large the corporate we may be, however large an NGO we may be, can rightfully claim that we have everything to solve and address the kind of challenges that we are facing, because not only is the scale so huge in our country, but also in each of the issues that we are talking about. We just heard in this panel itself, we've heard about skilling, we've heard about the challenges. We've been working with animals, like you mentioned, we're working with children with disabilities. Now, in each of these, there is so much depth. You need to scale deep before you scale wide, as I like to now say that, you pick up everything. We've been working in the theme of disabilities, as I just mentioned, and you realize that when you work, for example, with children with visual impairment, right? There are children who are born blind, and there are children who acquire blindness over time. There are children who are completely blind. There are children who are partially blind. Now, for each of these different categories, you actually need a different approach. So that's the kind of depth that is really required. And therefore, when we started working, we knew that in order to solve, or at least attempt to solve the kind of challenges that we are talking about, we have to work in collaboration with partners, with partner NGOs. We are by design, we are an urban organization. So we've chosen to work only in major cities of India. We are currently working in 11 major cities. And in each of these cities, while the problems could be quite similar, but we've realized that even in these cities, some of the solutions that you have to apply have to differ based on the kind of ground realities. And in order to really address those ground realities with a degree of sanctity, you need to work with organizations who have a very good understanding of the communities where we are trying to address these. So it was a given that when we started working, we would work with NGO partners who are embedded within communities, and that has largely stood us instead, because all of these years we've worked with a fairly large number of NGO partners who are close to the ground. And in that, what we've realized that as part of a large corporate, we can add value not just by funding, which is what you've done, but equally and perhaps more importantly, by helping in building capacities of a lot of these organizations. So when it comes to core processes such as HR or finance, etc., a lot of organizations require the kind of support in order to, really match. And especially now with compliance becoming more and more important, I think it's a very important area for corporates to look at, because adding value, and not just monitoring and evaluating, but actually adding value is something which is extremely, extremely important. So when it comes to collaborations, essentially, and I also loved the simplicity of what was expressed. So we also tried to keep things simple by looking at collaboration through 3 key lenses. One is purity of intent. So I think that's a given, that in order to really collaborate for the kind of causes that we are talking about, a certain purity of intent is a given. Second is a commitment to the cause. So while we are talking about areas like skill development of youth, or it is about disability, of course, when we partner, we look at the kind of commitment that partners are bringing to each of these respective domains that we are talking about. And third is alignment to the goals and objectives, because there might be commitment, but we as a corporate would want certain outcomes and certain outputs to come out of the interventions, certain impact being created. For that, it's important to have this alignment to the objectives which are shared. So we typically go through a fairly extended period of courtship when it comes to partnering with NGOs. There is due diligence, there are multiple field visits, multiple discussions. And even with that, we've had times where we had to let go of partners because some of the things that I just mentioned were not aligned. Coming to the kind of examples that you gave, we've had these recent collaborations with organizations like Cisco and the Anil Agrawal Foundation. And I think this is pretty obvious. And you mentioned that it is not the norm. I would say that it has not been the norm, but I would like to believe that it's changing. I think especially after COVID, there has been, I've sensed an increasing realization that unless we join hands, unless we work together, we will not be able to solve. So, for example, when it comes to Cisco, one of the areas in which we are doing skill development is in digital technology. And therefore, in the academies that we run on digital technologies, we wanted to offer a course around cybersecurity. And we realized that Cisco already has some very well aligned courses. And therefore, it was just a question of reaching out to them and then getting into this arrangement. Similarly, with Anil Agrawal Foundation, in the work that we do with teachers, we've done a deeper focus around early childhood. And they were looking, as part of the program that they're doing with Anganwadis, they were looking for an organization which could support there. So rather than reinventing the wheel, which is also a term that we've been hearing, ad nauseum, I think it's pretty obvious that we have to just pick up some of these themes where we bring in certain values and certain expertise. You have something, which can add to this, and therefore collaboration has to be the way forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Chetan. I think from this panel, we are getting such useful mantras. I'm making furious notes. I hope you are as well. The simplicity of what's coming through on this panel is incredible, but also executable in that sense. So with this, the representation that we've had so far, we've heard thematics around health, education, animal welfare. One of the areas, and we know that health and education has been two of the pillars that has got maximum funding and yet is still, screaming for attention in that sense with the scale of the problems in our country in those spaces. The other one, which is coming to the fore, is really the climate issue, right? While it was masked in the other work that we were doing, if you were doing rural work, you're always addressing climate. But to be even talking the parlance of climate awareness, and we're all seeing how it's impacting us at a very personal level, and so it's become even more critical. It's heartening to hear that the CSR funding towards climate as well has gone up incredibly high, and it now is amongst the top 3 areas where the social investment is going. And I believe that there's still a huge financing gap even in that space as we speak. But organizations like Godrej and Boyce, that is represented by Ashwini Deodeshmukh here, who's the head of CSR, they've been advocating the good and green philosophy for a while now as a group. And I believe the CSR initiative of Greener India is part of this mandate. And you've been a large supporter for environment overall. So with this, evolving climate landscape, and whether it's India or globally, we're also seeing the evolution of how organizations are dealing with it, right? There is a sustainability function, there's CSR. So I wanted to also explore on how Godrej and Boyce is really, straddling both those worlds in terms of business alignment as well as working in the community. So any lessons that you can share from how this works would be great, Ashwini. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavanya. So basically, told about the good and green policy, so slightly I would like to explain it. Godrej has been in the area of philanthropy for long, and in the year 2010-11, we basically crystallized our good and green vision. So the intent was basically to ingrain that in the overall working of the organization. So we had done almost 60, 70 years of philanthropy, and we were wondering as how do we continue it for the next 100 years. So basically the thought was that shifting from a family commitment, it should go into something which is a day-to-day working in the business. So we crystallized the good and green policy and the vision in the year 2010-11. The good and green vision focuses on two areas. So the greener part is basically as how we can avoid or protect environment, and the good part is basically how do we serve the underserved. So under this, we have the three verticals. We have the Greener India, which is looking at minimizing the impact on the environment, not only because of our operations, but also because of products and various other functions, aligned functions. Then we have the good and green products as what could be our offering to the world, and whatever we offer should be good and green. And thirdly, we were looking at employability. We have also added the vertical of sustainable communities so recently. So these were some 4 areas which we are working on. The overall intent of the vision is so that there is a mix of how do we take it as corporate social responsibility. We did not want it to be limited to just the 2% spending, but the intent was that it should become a way of life, way of working at Godrej. So in anything which we do, we think as how it can be green and how it can be good. So that was the thought behind that, and that's how our management thought of ingraining this philosophy of CSR right into the basic working of the organization. The landscape has changed over the years. So when we started in the year 2010-11, we were really struggling as what should be the targets, what should be the approach to it for each of the vertical. And in our wisdom, we basically took up the best stretch target. So we took the best stretch target of, say, reducing 50% of our energy consumption, then becoming water positive, taking up some 33% of our revenue coming from good and green products. But behind all this, there was always a thought, the same thing as, really, is it adequate? Is it actually enough? Over the years, we have seen that the landscape has really evolved over internationally as well as nationally. And we see a lot of commitments at the global level, a lot of frameworks coming up, which really have helped us to redefine this matrices. And as we move ahead, we are aligning our targets along the global lines. So the things like, say, in energy consumption, we are looking at EP 100. So that earlier our target of 50%, we were happy to see that we surpassed it. Our target was 2020, and we surpassed it in 2018 itself. So we are aligning the upcoming targets more in line with the international level. In the area of water, it is very critical in our areas, and we became water positive in the year 2015-16. As the standards moved, we realized we added that component of water stress. So basically in future, what we decided was we would be focusing on more than water positivity. More initiatives would be there in water stressed areas like Mohali and Chennai, where we are also functioning. And we would be moving more and more towards community level water sufficiency also. So in line with that, we took up under CSR more projects related to water conservation, water filtration, and we sort of embraced more and more water projects as we move ahead. Currently, we have 2 projects going on at Chennai, which is more on pond rejuvenation, and 1 project in Mohali. In the coming 3 years also, 3 to 5 years, we would be continuing this focus. Secondly, in the area of biodiversity, we are known for our mangroves. I think that is our, I would say, showcase projects. And the way we move ahead is basically we realize that we could be the lighthouse for India, and therefore we have partnered with WWF for the Magical Mangrove Project. So it's more on awareness, but yet it plays a very vital role. So every year we train around 100 individuals, volunteers, to really on the water, on the conservation of mangroves, and it's very critical because India has a vast coastline. So this is how the emerging standards somehow have helped us. Our focus is more now, and we are aligning to take more stringent and stretch targets. Secondly, I think we are doing little bit differently than other businesses, or rather, we feel that we are doing it differently. So at the start itself, we focused equally on not only the business, I would say, environment indicators, but the indicators and the performance of our products also. We strongly believe that the products and the services are the purpose of the company, and the way and their impact on the society is much larger. So at the initial stage itself, we took up the target of 33% of our products becoming good and green. And these products were earlier aligned with the Millennium Development Goals, and with the coming up of SDGs, these are now aligned with the SDGs. So we are actively working on finding solutions, finding products which will be useful towards meeting the SDGs. Few of the examples, like we have been in the business of refrigerants, fridge, ACs, and all. So we have included the vertical of medical refrigerators, which are more towards the healthcare part of it, and the kind of work which we did before COVID really helped us to really ramp up and serve the vaccine cooler requirements of the nation in that short span of during COVID. Secondly, we are also working on education furniture. We are into furniture, and we felt that this line is something which could be helpful for meeting the education needs also. So we have been working with the government for the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and we are there in most of the schools in the area, in right from Odisha to Assam to Jammu and Kashmir also. So our focus is basically very led, because we always had this purpose as business. The purpose of the business is to pioneer progress. So that is where our mission that way. So we have been in spaces where we see that there is more of nation building. So right from designing the first lock during when the Bombay, when there were more thefts in this, or designing the ballot boxes for the first election, or to really work out components for the Chandrayaan 2. So this has been the whole purpose. So I wouldn't say that it is mixing of CSR and this thing, but the overall intent of the business is like, how do you identify social challenges in the country and what can be done, and you take the risk, and you be the first mover to really work on those problems. So that has been our take.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And I think pioneering progress is again a takeaway that I would have in terms of building a purpose, but that then defining for ourselves with clarity and with our eyes wide open, what does progress mean, and at the cost of what, right? So I believe the kind of shifts you're making in the product innovation space as well to go greener, a lot of organizations taking it down their value chain to the entire supply chain, the ecosystem. It's an arduous task, because as you go deeper and trying to green the entire value chain, it's a tremendous load on the businesses. But to be able to take that first move and understand that that's the way of life that one has to shift, and that there is no negotiation now with the kind of climate challenges. So with that, I think a good segue now to Sangeeta, who's in the entertainment business. Is it free tickets to all for Jawan or something? No, Sangeeta? So, well, Chief Sustainability Officer of PVR INOX. But here she's representing the sustainability function, also wears the DEI hat at PVR. So we'd love to know how you're integrating, I think, the similar theme into your area of work. And also, I believe the gender aspect, DEI, how is it defined at PBR and what your work is? Thanks.
Thanks a lot for having me on this panel, Business World. Sorry for marching in late. Completely not my fault because I planned well, but there was unprecedented traffic. So I do not represent CSR. I lead business sustainability for PBR INOX Limited. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that is that while there's a lot that can be achieved out of CSR, but there's another avenue that businesses, if businesses done responsibly, like we've been hearing from the rest of the panelists, can also create a huge social impact. While there are lots of projects that are currently being pursued across energy conservation, water conservation, we have 371 properties as we speak. And so obviously the impact of energy and water is huge and immense. We moved away from plastic. You'll see that we're using sugarcane bagasse in our cinemas for food. We're working on a lot of other projects. There's one that's currently being piloted to reduce waste. However, the one I want to talk about is where I feel the maximum social impact has been achieved. And this is making our cinemas accessible for people with disabilities. And so while DEI is usually in most organizations from the employee side, yes, we're working on the employee side. And Chetan, I would like to pick your brains on, since you are hiring a lot of people with disabilities and we want our employee force to represent our customer mix. But as this right now, I would like to emphasize this program that we've been pursuing since 2018. It's called Cinema for All. What it does is it makes, of course, first we're talking about accessibility by design. So we're following universal design principles to when we create our cinemas. However, before the program started, we have between INOX and PVR a critical mass of about 250 odd cinemas, which also needed to be worked on. So we have assistive equipment that we have put in place. This equipment is what's used in most tourist sites in Europe, and it's a beautiful, it's a non-fixed appliance which carries a wheelchair along with the person in it to the desired row. When it comes to people with hearing and hearing impairment and vision, the whole gamut, the whole compass shifts to the producer because it's content-led. So we have very few films with subtitles in our country, and we have no films that come with audio description for the blind. So while for the hearing impaired, we make it discoverable for them to be able to discover shows that are playing with subtitles for the few films that do come with subtitles. The bit about vision impaired has been a struggle right from 2018. So what I didn't realize was that I would end up into policy advocacy as well as part of this program, and there have been multiple representations to the government. Recently, one PIL has been of an individual who filed a PIL for audio description. He won it, and Yash Raj Films was directed to make to create audio description for Pathan. That's just the first few steps ahead, and we do hope that in the coming years we will be able to have more films that are more inclusive. What we've been able to, and in terms of what PVR's role has been to be able to ensure that when audio description finally arrives, we have the technology to be able to stream it accordingly. We've tied up with an app developer that has created an app where when you enter the cinema, you sync it with the soundtrack, and the audio description for that person starts exactly where the film is playing. So it's phenomenal technology, and we have it all. So it's just that it's a matter of time that we should be able to make entertainment and the largest entertainment mode in the country accessible for people with disabilities, and we're talking about 6 to 7% of our population. So going forward, you'll also see that as of today, as we speak, we have 30 people with disabilities who are there in our cinemas. Out of them, 10 are intellectually disabled, and that's of course needs special handling. But going forward, you'll see a lot more of inclusive representation. A lot of our cinemas are, I mean, as far as women are concerned, yes, I wouldn't say that we have a very good gender representation, but we're working on that as well. But I think the Cinema for All program should be able to give that push to management to be able to see more people with disabilities on this side of the table as well. Thank you.
Wow, wonderful. Assistive technology is a powerful medium like the cinema, which will become much more accessible. I guess impact is also about having a sound mind, well-being, being joyful, at least for the few hours that you're in the cinema. So I guess that's work that is well representing also what our theme of the session was, which is aligning business goals with social impact, which I think got resonated in what Sangeeta mentioned. So thank you very much. I know we're coming very close to the end of our session. We can possibly take 2 questions from the audience. And I just have one speed round, which we'll probably end the session with, which is just one word that you can say, which would be, we're not going to hold your organizations back to it, but just as your personal big, hairy, audacious goal, what would it be in the next 5-year horizon that you would have liked to achieve? We're not going to take all the constraints that you have. Just a single word as a goal, but we'll take the ladies' question there. If you can just keep it short, please. Your name and the person that you're addressing in your question and the question.
Good morning. I came here for Sangeeta. My name is Tina, and I'm hard of hearing. And I've been interacting with Sangeeta a lot for accessibility in movie theaters for deaf people. And she's been very, very responsive. And whenever I reach out to her, she takes care of the problem. So thank you. I have a statement and then a question. When I registered for the event, because I knew Sangeeta was going to be on the panel, and of course Tech Mahindra, they've done a lot of work for deaf people in education, in field of education, which is what I work on. I had requested the organization to provide caption, and they said it will be given the next day on social media. I've come here to educate a bit about that, which is that access is about equal user experience. I'm here to talk to the panelists. If I see it on social media tomorrow, I won't be able to interact with the panelists. I know it's the first time probably, and I need to attend more of these events so that I can spread awareness on this, that we want to participate in a lot of discussions about environment and gender equality and access. So, but to be able to do that, I need to see what's going on in the conversation. It will help if we have captions on the screen or make it available to us. So that's my statement.
Thank you so much, Tina. And I would acknowledge that it is a work in progress.
Yes.
These are things that we all need to invest more in to get done. So point noted. I'm sure the organizers will invite you the next time, and it will all be in place as well. So
Thank you.
Because doing subtitles would be a lot more difficult, but having a sign language interpreter would be very simple. So my request to the organizers for future conferences is that if you have trouble finding one, reach out. I can share names and numbers with you because the whole idea of it is to be more inclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very important point. Sign language interpreter. But I do not use sign language. So anyone who attends, my request is a lot of people who are working cross intersectional identity is to ask the person who's attending what they need. I don't need sign language interpreter. Captions are good, but yes, I do have many friends who rely on sign language interpreters.
Absolutely.
So definitely take their need on board.
Humbly
I have a question,
noted.
but I'll let somebody else ask the question, then I'll ask mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. One last one in interest of time. I can see 2 hands up, but we'll take the one right at the back, just because we acknowledge backbenchers always.
Namaskar everyone, I'm Kapil. I've always been a backbencher and today also. So thank you for the insightful session. My question is very much for Ambika sir. So the Samvad has really been a very great initiative. How can Dhaga be elevated in Odisha? And second, when most of the population of Odisha state is reliant on the coal as a mineral, how can renewable energy be harnessed to a next level so that the target that is set can be met? Thank you. If not only Ambika sir, if everybody can answer, thank you for this.
Yeah, I think I was, if there would not be a question, she would not have given me time to respond. I think we are focused on just transition, and we have started working on certain biomass and production of biobriquettes and biochars. By 2030, at least 5 to 10% of our energy source should be from renewable. And more importantly, some of the mining locations are completely run by the solar power also. That's one. And second, I think we work on a lot of conservation issues, especially on olive ridley turtle, black buck, peacock, in partnership with Kotak Mahindra. So similarly, we have started working on mangroves. We have 480 kilometers. So communities are the best innovators in Odisha. Odisha faces cyclone every year, multiple cyclones. And when we started working with the communities, they come up with a program called community-based disaster preparedness. However efficient may be a government, but they would not be able to reach out to the communities who are in the remote and fragile geographic situations. So if communities come together with a special focus on women and children, so they come together and they save themselves. And that's why government of Odisha is recognized globally for the best ever disaster response program, from disaster management to disaster mitigation and building resilient communities. So there are many such examples, but I am sitting next to the teacher who is holding a pen, would not allow me more time.
I did
Thank
not
you very
release
much.
my mic for that reason.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, wonderful. I know we're up for time, and our next speaker, very reputed speaker, which you all have been waiting for, is right here. So I'll probably request the panel to stay on with the audience and interact. We know we had a number of questions and hands up in the air, but a very formal thank you to all of you. I'm sure it was a very useful hour for our audience, and we hope to stay in touch. Thank you. Thank you, Business World.